And if you have it and you take methylene blue, it can rupture your red blood cells. That is also a medical emergency. Okay, so today we're talking about methylene blue. You probably have seen people putting like blue drops into their drinks, turning the tongue blue, things like that. And they may tell you that's the secret to having better energy and living to 110. RFK was seen in 2025 to put something blue into his drinks, and that kicks off millions of views, and the search for methylene blue goes through the roof. And then, social media caught on because the blue tongue thing is just so viral. Like, I get it. It's a very visually striking thing. And then all of a sudden, everyone's doing it. I haven't done it yet. Should I? Now, as a pharmacist, methylene blue is actually a real drug. It is FDA approved for a condition called methylglobinemia. Say that 10 times as fast. Which is a condition when your red blood cells lose the capacity to carry oxygen properly, kind of like malaria. It can also be used as an antidote in cyanide poisoning, off-label, and I first interacted with methylene blue mostly as a diagnostic dye. So you would use the dye, it's kind of like a contrast dye when you have people go into cath labs. So for example, when someone is suspected of having heart block, because it is a dye, and so you could see it under imaging, and surgeons would use it to see if there was cancer, any fistula, any blockage in the arteries as well. So that's where I first interacted with methylene blue. And of course, in certain regions with malaria, it is still used to this day. And so because it has history as a medical drug with legitimate uses, that gives this drug some credibility. But here's where the quantum leap begins, is between an approved emergency room medicine or diagnostic medicine used for very specific conditions to something that anyone and everyone should take for energy. There's a leap there. There is a leap. And it's not the same claim. But let's talk about how mitochondria actually work. So if you've taken basic biology in high school, you would know the mitochondria are what we call the power unit of the cell. And within the mitochondria, it turns sugar into 32 units of ATP through something what we call like the electron transport chain, and a lot of redox reactions, like a lot. I had to learn that for pharmacy school, and nobody can remember it now. Nobody. Methylene blue is a redox molecule, which means that in theory, it can pick up electrons and drop them off. So in theory, it can kind of act as a backup shuttle in that chain of electron transport, which is why people think that it can help tired or damaged mitochondria and to keep on helping the production of energy and ATP. And also mop up some oxidative stress in the process. And that is how it works for methylglobinemia. And methylglobinemia is a blood disorder where the hemoglobin is so altered that it cannot deliver oxygen to the cells properly. And you need oxygen to survive. But again, methylglobinemia is a serious and also highly specific condition. Most of us walking around don't have that. Most of us don't have an issue with mitochondria. If we do, then we probably have bigger issues than scrolling through TikTok and Instagram. But because it has a legitimate use and it does have this mechanism in which it is used under specific conditions, people then confuse that with therefore it should be good for everything, which is not the same claim at all. And I guess people are going to say, well, what's a harm? At least it's no harm, right? And online, methylene blue is marketed for everything from anti-aging to focus to memory to mood to cancer to glowing skin to just general fatigue. So it's used for a lot of things. And generally, if you are like selling something that is good for everything, it probably means it's good for nothing. I probably say this a lot in my videos, but Where's the evidence? Um, and there's really not much human trials with methylene blue when it comes to supportive health, anti-aging, cognition, and things like that. And actually, in preliminary human studies, methylene blue didn't really show any meaningful benefit. There are some rodent data though, so I guess it's good if you're a mouse. I think I've said it before in a previous video, which is that a lot of times when you are shown things that are really promising in rodents, most of the time it doesn't pan through. So I worked for pharmaceutical companies, and generally we have a lot of molecules that is investigated under phase 1. So those are like, rodent studies, maybe some safety studies, things like that. And most of the time they get to phase 1 because there are promising signals. But most of the phase 1 studies don't make it out to phase 2, never mind phase 3, which is where you would actually use like hundreds of people, randomized, placebo-controlled, those kind of trials that is required to get a drug into regulatory submission and eventual approval for its use in humans. It's estimated that about 1 in 20 molecules that were promising in rodents actually make it out to the phase 3 pile. That's a lot of failures. That's a lot of like promising signal that didn't show any benefit further down the line. And it's because we're not rats. And also, I mean, I guess some people could say, "Oh, but we are mammals. How different could it be?" I don't know. A lot, a lot, a lot. It's also because so many conditions are multifactorial, especially when it comes to things like aging. It's so multifactorial. It's hard to pinpoint down to one thing and one thing only. And so it's hard to show a benefit in humans when so many things can affect it. How well did you sleep, your diet, exercise, things like that. It's hard to keep everybody the same because we're not all the same. And that is what those phase 3 trials are trying to suss out, which is in this giant pool of people that are heterogeneous, meaning we're all not the same, can we still find benefit? And here's where, I'm gonna go on my soapbox and talk about why anecdotal evidence is not good enough. You should never look at anecdotal evidence as hard evidence. There are things such as placebo effects and also nocebo effect. And placebo effect is actually really big. Like I worked on a drug that had the placebo arm, the placebo arm had clinically meaningful improvement in the score that we were measuring. And it was a mystery because nobody could figure out why there was such a big placebo effect, except that, patients really want there to be a benefit. So they were really hoping for it. And much of our experience of the world and of us is influenced by how we think. So if you're going in getting methylene blue and you've heard on TikTok and on Instagram about how this is going to be this amazing thing, look, RFK Jr. is taking it and so are those other people, you're probably already predisposed to think that there's going to be a benefit. So the next day, whether it be, let's say you just slept better or the time of the month, full moon or not, you're going to attribute all of that to what you just took. And people are not static beings, meaning that you're not going to wake up feeling the same every day, right? And that is this variability in how we feel, function throughout the day, throughout the month, especially if you're a woman, you will really know what I'm talking about. Those are the things, those are the noise that phase 3 trials try to suss out and average out to see if there was still, in spite of all of these variances, if there was still a clinically meaningful difference. Anyhow, I shall hop off my soapbox now about why, before you take anything, we need to take a look at, the evidence and the human evidence. I know that some people will say, oh, But what is the harm in taking it? Well, methylene blue has a biphasic dose response. That means it's bell-shaped, like. What that means practically is that it has two dose ranges in which it has a response in your body. At the lower range, which is less than 2 milligrams per kilogram, it can help, which is its therapeutic dose. It can help with oxidative stress, things like that. And at higher doses, which is greater than 4 to 7 mg per kg, it starts to have the opposite effect, start to inhibit mitochondrial function, causing oxidative stress, etc. The dose makes the poison. So if you've ever thought, oh, if a little is good, the more is better, that is not the case over here. And I'm sure that most people online are not going to tell you about that. And so if you're like eyeballing the dropper and be like, how much should I take? Well, I don't know what to tell you. Don't do it. Furthermore, methylene blue is also a monoamine oxidase inhibitor. It acts as a reversible but highly potent monoamine oxidase inhibitor. What does that really mean? It means that when you're combining it with certain antidepressants, such as selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor or SNRS, which is a serotonin norepinephrine reuptake inhibitor, things like that, you are predisposing your chance of having something called serotonin syndrome, which can be very, very severe. Other medications include some medications for migraine, pain medications like tramadol. It is severe enough that FDA actually put out a black box warning in 2021, 2011, something like that, warning people about against the use of using methylene blue when they also have these medications on board. And serotonin syndrome is quite severe and can be life-threatening in some cases. And then if you have G6PD deficiency, which affects roughly, 400 million people worldwide? Just a little 400 million people worldwide. Mostly of people from Mediterranean ancestry, African, Southeastern Asians. And if you have it and you take methylene blue, it can rupture your red blood cells. That is also a medical emergency. It is an absolute contraindication for those patients. But most people with this G6PD deficiency have no idea that they have that deficiency. And so you could be taking methylene blue, which is contraindicated, and have no idea that it's a contraindication. And it's because methylene blue relies entirely on G6PD to work. When you don't have this enzyme on board, then methylene blue cannot be safely reduced down to something called leukomethylene blue. And instead, it hangs out in your body and acts as an intense oxidizing agent and can actually destroy your red blood cells, leading to hemolytic anemia, worsening hypoxia, death, etc. If after all of this you still really want to take methylene blue, take the USB grade because it's purity tested. There are some that sell, I think, aquarium grade, using it for aquariums. That can have other things in it, probably not good for your health. It is also contraindicated in pregnancy, so don't take it if you're pregnant. Of course, I'm not saying that, nobody should touch this. There is some interest with using low doses of this for cognition, but we will see what the science tells us. Let me jump back on my soapbox. Always look at the science. Are they clinical papers, or are they just trying to sell you something? And again, if you're really set on taking it, just make sure that you don't have any interacting medications on board. Check with your local pharmacist. And then find out about your G6PD status. Because if you have a deficiency, then this is a contraindication, absolute contraindication. And again, take the USP grade methylene blue. That's a grade that you would find in hospitals, not the aquarium one. So what's the verdict? Methylene blue is a real medication used for real conditions, but it has not been proven in human studies for things like cognition anti-aging, clearer skin, cancer, etc. It just hasn't been. And furthermore, there are real contraindications and precautions. So make sure you speak to your local pharmacist or your doctor if you're really set upon taking this. And as always, ask yourself the question, has it been tested in humans or just rats? Has it been real evidence or is this just another vibe? And who profits from me believing this? And as always, thank you so much for watching, and let me know in the comments which other molecule you think I should cover. I should do one about peptides. Yeah, I should do one about peptides. Brand new leaf over here. She is completely white, which means this leaf, as beautiful as it is, will not photosynthesize. It's kind of useless. Beautiful but useless, like me. This is not turned into a plant channel. I just love my plants.